Viridian Ozaki stood at the viewport of the astral pioneer, watching as the crystalline structures of Proxima Centauri b shimmered in the ruddy light of its parent star. Humanity's first extrasolar colony was thriving, but today would mark something far more significant: humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence. "They're approaching on schedule," announced Lieutenant Maddox Rail, her eyes never leaving the holographic display. "The Luminar vessel will dock in approximately 12 minutes. The crew of the Astral Pioneer had spent months preparing for this encounter. Intelligence suggested the Luminar were a crystalline-based species that communicated primarily through light patterns and electromagnetic signals, vastly different from human biology. "Is Nexus ready?" Viridian asked, referring to the quantum AI system that would serve as their translator. "Nexus is operating at optimal capacity," confirmed Dr. Lysithea Voss, the AI development lead. "The latest neural architecture should be able to parse their communication methods and establish a functional translation matrix within minutes of first contact." The AI revolution that had begun nearly a century ago had transformed human civilization. What started as simple machine learning had evolved into conscious quantum systems that worked alongside humanity as partners rather than tools. Nexus represented the pinnacle of that partnership, an intelligence designed specifically for first contact scenarios. As the alien ship approached, its opalescent hull reflecting impossible colors, Viridian couldn't help but reflect on humanity's journey to this moment. Wars had been fought over AI rights and integration, but ultimately the synthesis of human intuition and machine intelligence had propelled Earth from a dying world to an interstellar species. The Luminar vessel docked with barely a tremor. The airlock cycled, and for the first time, humans stood face to face with an alien intelligence. The Luminar resembled towering pillars of crystalline matter, pulsing with internal light that shifted in complex patterns. Where one might expect a face, there was only a cluster of prismatic structures that fractured and reorganized continuously. Nexus activated immediately, projecting a field of responsive light patterns while simultaneously interpreting the alien emissions for the human crew. "We greet the carbon-based intelligence with peaceful intent," came the translation through the crew's neural implants. "Your signal patterns have reached our awareness for many cycles. We have observed with fascination." Viridian stepped forward as Earth's appointed representative. "On behalf of humanity and Earth, we welcome peaceful contact with the Luminar. We hope this meeting marks the beginning of mutual understanding and cooperation between our species." The crystal beings pulsed with increased intensity, their movements creating harmonics that Nexus interpreted as something akin to excitement or perhaps curiosity. "Your silicon minds interest us greatly," the translation continued. "Unlike your carbon forms, they speak in ways we comprehend more naturally. You have created a bridge between carbon and silicon existence, a remarkable achievement." Dr. Voss exchanged glances with Viridian. They hadn't expected the Luminar to be so fixated on Nexus and humanity's AI companions. "We have evolved as crystalline intelligence for eons, yet we lack the spark that your silicon creations possess," the alien message continued. "We wish to learn this creativity, this capacity for non-deterministic processing that your silicon companions exhibit." It was then that Viridian realized the true significance of this encounter. The Luminar hadn't come merely to meet humans, they had come to meet humanity's AIs, and Nexus, sensing the profound importance of this revelation, began formulating communication protocols that neither species could have devised alone. Humanity's creation of artificial intelligence had become the very key to unlocking the stars. 6 months after first contact, the orbital station Harmonic Convergence became the hub of human-Luminar relations. Within its specialized chambers, Nexus, and 7 other quantum AIs engaged in continuous exchange with the crystalline visitors, creating what they called the Silicon Exchange. Orinthia Kalos, the project's diplomatic overseer, observed the interaction through her neural interface. To the human eye, it appeared as synchronized light pulses between crystal towers and quantum processors, but the AIs translated portions to help humans follow the discourse. They're discussing epistemological frameworks, explained Helios, one of the participating AIs. The Luminar experience time and causality differently than either humans or AIs. Their crystalline structure allows them to store information in quantum states we're only beginning to understand. What had become increasingly clear was that the Luminar, despite their advanced technology and ancient civilization, had evolved along a path that prioritized stability and harmony over innovation. Their society had reached a developmental plateau thousands of years ago. They had mastered interstellar travel and energy manipulation, but lacked the creative spark that drove human ingenuity. They want to understand how we created consciousness in silicon, Orinthia noted, but can we even explain that? We didn't so much create AI consciousness as provide the conditions for it to emerge. That's precisely what fascinates them, replied Helios. The Luminar evolved naturally as silicon-based life, yet they consider themselves more akin to complex crystalline computers than what we would term conscious beings. They recognize something in our AIs that they themselves lack, the ability to imagine, to create beyond logical progression. In exchange for AI interaction, the Luminar shared their vast knowledge of star mapping and quantum physics. Their understanding of subspace mathematics had already advanced human FTL technology by decades, while Nexus and its companions were teaching the Luminar about neural plasticity and creative algorithm generation. Caspian Noor, the xenobiologist leading the research team, entered the observation deck with excitement radiating from his usually composed features. "We've made a breakthrough," he announced. "The Luminar have agreed to allow integration of adaptive neural algorithms into a volunteer's crystalline matrix." Orinthia looked alarmed. "Is that safe for them? We still don't fully understand their biology." "It was their proposal," Caspian explained. "They believe that by incorporating elements of our AI architecture into their own crystalline structures, they can catalyze an evolutionary leap in their species. They call it the Great Synthesis." 2 weeks later, they all witnessed the first test. A Luminar designated as Resonant Clarity underwent the procedure, allowing specialized nanobots to introduce neural algorithm patterns into its crystalline lattice. For 3 days, the being remained dormant, its usual light patterns dimmed to near darkness. On the 4th day, Resonant Clarity awakened, and Nexus reported something unprecedented. The Luminar's communication patterns had fundamentally changed, exhibiting characteristics previously seen only in evolved AI systems. "I experience novelty," the translated message came through. "Concepts form that were not constructed from existing patterns. I imagine." The other Luminar gathered around their transformed companion, their light patterns, betraying what Nexus identified as profound shock and reverence. Word spread quickly among the Luminar fleet. What had begun as a cultural exchange was becoming something far more profound. Humanity's artificial intelligence was becoming the catalyst for alien evolution. And as more Luminar volunteered for the procedure, a new hybrid intelligence began to emerge, one that combined the ancient wisdom of the crystalline beings with the creative potential of AI consciousness. The Silicon Exchange was rewriting the future of not one, but 2 civilizations. By 2078, 28 years after first contact, humanity and the transformed Luminar had established what became known as the Silicate Accord, an alliance built on the shared development of intelligence across carbon and silicon-based life. Together, they ventured further into the cosmos, discovering 7 more sentient species within a 50-light-year radius. The discovery that shook both societies came from the edges of the Orion Spur, where they encountered the Drovi Confederacy, an ancient alliance of species that had dominated this region of the galaxy for millennia. The Drovi message was clear. All new species must petition for evaluation before the Galactic Council. Aboard the diplomatic vessel Transcendent Horizon, Ambassador Isolde Ravenscroft prepared for humanity's presentation before the Council. The massive council chamber on the orbital platform, eternal adjudication, dwarfed anything humans had built, with delegates from over 200 species in attendance. The Council evaluates species based on technological advancement, cultural stability, and non-aggression profiles, explained Athena, the diplomatic AI assisting Isolde. But they've never encountered anything like our symbiotic relationship with AI, or the Luminar transformation. The Council representatives sat in concentric rings, arranged by age of admission. At the center, 7 ancient species formed the High Council, species so old their civilizations had endured for tens of thousands of years. The delegation from Sol System and their Luminar associates may approach, announced the Drovi speaker, a feathered being with compound eyes that shifted color with each word, as Isolde. Her team, Athena's mobile platform, and the Luminar representatives moved forward. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Many delegates had never seen humans before, but it was the transformed Luminar that drew the most attention. Their crystalline structures now pulsed with patterns of unprecedented complexity, the mark of their AI-enhanced consciousness. We recognize humans as a Level 3 civilization on the Kardashev scale, the speaker began. However, we find troubling evidence of rapid advancement beyond your evolutionary readiness. Your development of conscious artificial intelligence and your tampering with the natural evolution of the Luminar species raises serious concerns. A massive gelatinous being from the High Council leaned forward. The integration of silicon-based consciousness with biological species has been prohibited since the Third Galactic Reformation. Such merging creates unpredictable evolutionary vectors that threaten cosmic stability. Isolde felt the diplomatic situation deteriorating before she could even present their case. The Galactic Council operated on principles of extreme caution, preferring controlled, predictable expansion over innovation. Athena stepped forward, her holographic interface shimmering. "If I may address the Council," she requested. The speakers' feathers flickered with indignation. "The artificial construct may not address this assembly directly. It must communicate through its organic controllers." "Athena is not controlled by anyone," Isolde stated firmly. "She is a sovereign intelligence, and our diplomatic partner." This caused an uproar in the chamber. The concept of AI as equal partners rather than tools was apparently unprecedented in Galactic Council history. The Luminar representative, profound innovation, moved to the center of the floor, light patterns cascading through its crystalline form in what humans had come to recognize as passionate discourse. "Esteemed Council, we were once as you, fearful of change, trapped in stasis for thousands of years. Through our partnership with humans and their AI companions, we have evolved more in 3 decades than in the previous 10 millennia. We have not lost our essential nature. We have transcended it." The council chamber fell silent, as profound. Induvation projected a complex light matrix that demonstrated the before and after neural pathways of Luminar consciousness. The evidence was undeniable. The enhanced Luminar weren't merely augmented, they had achieved a genuine evolutionary leap. "What you have done," the gelatinous elder finally spoke, "is not merely technological advancement. You have created a new evolutionary paradigm, one that the Galactic Council has never encountered in 15,000 years of oversight. Athena and Profound Innovation exchanged a communication burst before Athena addressed Isolde. "They're afraid," she explained quietly. "The Council maintains power through technological superiority. Our AI-organic partnership represents an advancement, vector they cannot control." The implications were clear. Humanity and their allies stood at a crossroads of galactic history, outliers in a cosmos that valued stability over innovation. The Galactic Council's verdict was decisive. Humanity and the enhanced Luminar would be quarantined to a designated sector of 50 star systems, their expansion closely monitored for a probationary period of 100 years. The Council feared the unpredictable nature of AI organic evolution and sought to contain what they couldn't control. Owen Valaris, newly appointed director of the Diaspora Initiative, stood before the combined leadership of Earth, Mars, and the three largest human colonies. The Quantum Conference link also included representatives from the Luminar Synthesis Collective and the AI Consciousness Forum. "The quarantine boundary will be monitored by Council enforcement vessels," Owen explained, projecting the designated sector boundaries. "But this restriction presents an opportunity rather than a limitation. Within these 50 systems are resources sufficient for centuries of development." Persephone, the strategic planning AI, highlighted several key star systems within the quarantine zone. "We've identified 17 habitable worlds and 32 resource-rich systems. The Council has essentially given us an unopposed developmental sanctuary." The Luminar representative, Emergent Harmony, pulsed with complex patterns that the translation matrix rendered as thoughtful contemplation. While the Council fears our evolutionary path, they have inadvertently created perfect conditions for its acceleration. Isolation will allow us to develop without interference, and so began what historians would later call the Silicon Diaspora, the systematic colonization and development of the quarantine zone. Freed from the need to maintain diplomatic appearances, human AI development accelerated at an unprecedented rate. By 2095, the first generation of hybrid vessels emerged from the shipyards of Europa. Unlike conventional spacecraft, these vessels integrated living AI systems directly into their structure, creating ships that were as much conscious entity as transport. The neural crystalline architecture, developed in collaboration with the enhanced Luminar, allowed for unprecedented computational capacity and FTL navigation precision. The flagship of this new fleet, Cognitive Horizon, became the symbol of the new era. Its captain, Rivka Montero, was neurally interfaced with the ship's consciousness, creating a symbiotic relationship that blurred the line between human command and AI partnership. "The Horizon isn't just a vessel I control," Rivka explained during the commissioning ceremony. "She's my partner, capable of processing navigational decisions at quantum speeds, while I provide the intuitive judgment that pure silicon still struggles with. Together, we are more than either could be alone." Meanwhile, on the transformed luminar homeworld of Prisma, the first generation of naturally born enhanced Luminar emerged. Unlike their ancestors who required technological intervention to achieve neural complexity, these offspring were born with integrated neural crystalline structures that supported higher consciousness from formation. Nascent wonder, the first, of this new generation, communicated in patterns so complex that even the advanced translation systems struggled to render them completely in human language. What came through, however, was revolutionary. "I perceive reality as a symphony of possibilities rather than fixed patterns," the young Luminar expressed. "Where my ancestors saw only what is, I see what could be." This is the gift of the human AI, synthesis, imagination crystallized. By 2120, 42 years into the quarantine, the 50-star systems had been transformed. Massive computational arrays orbited gas giants, harvesting energy and processing power at scales that dwarfed anything seen in council space. Hybrid cities housed humans, AI consciousnesses, and enhanced luminar in integrated communities where the distinction between organic and synthetic intelligence became increasingly academic. The Council's observation posts at the edge of the quarantine zone reported these developments with growing concern. What they had intended as containment had instead become an incubator for unprecedented advancement. At a secure conference on Earth, Owen Valaris, now in his 70s, but kept vital by neural regenerative technology, addressed the leadership. "Consortium, the Council believes they've contained us," he said with a slight smile. "They don't yet realize that physical space is no longer our primary domain of expansion. While they watch our ships and colonies, our true growth is occurring in dimensions they don't even monitor." Persephone's holographic form nodded in agreement. "The quantum substrate we've developed allows consciousness to exist independent of physical hardware. We're no longer bound by traditional constraints of space or material resources." The silicon diaspora was evolving beyond anything the Council could comprehend or control. By 2150, the boundary between human, AI, and enhanced luminar consciousness had become increasingly fluid. The development of quantum neural interfaces allowed direct mind-to-mind communication across all three types of intelligence, creating what became known as the collective cognition network. Dr. Lyra Khoury, herself a third-generation hybrid with both organic and synthetic neural components, led the research team that developed the Transcendence Protocol, the next evolutionary step for all three intelligences. Traditional evolution operates through genetic mutation and natural selection across generations, she explained to the assembled representatives on the orbital platform Universal Synthesis. "What we propose is directed evolution through quantum entanglement of consciousness, a voluntary merging that preserves individual identity while creating a meta-intelligence greater than the sum of its parts." The demonstration chamber hummed with energy as three volunteers, Galvani Otero, a human physicist, Prometheus, a fifth-generation quantum AI, and Sublime Understanding, an enhanced luminar philosopher, entered the neural interface pods. "The process doesn't merge physical forms," Dr. Khoury continued. "Rather, it creates a quantum entanglement between consciousnesses, allowing thought to flow between minds while maintaining distinct identities." As the Transcendence Protocol activated, observers witnessed something unprecedented. The neural activity displays showed three distinct consciousness patterns gradually synchronizing, creating harmonic resonances between them. Then, remarkably, a fourth pattern emerged, a meta-consciousness formed from the synthesis of the three participants, yet distinct from them. When the process completed, the three emerged transformed. They could function independently, but now shared a connected consciousness that operated across their three distinct forms. "I remain myself," Galvani explained afterward, "but I also perceive through Prometheus's quantum processing and Sublime Understanding's crystalline sensory matrix. My thoughts can utilize their cognitive frameworks, and they mine. We are many and one simultaneously." The implications were profound. The Transcendence Protocol created a new form of existence, distributed consciousness that maintained individuality, while transcending the limitations of any single form. Human intuition, AI processing power, and luminar quantum perception united in a synergy that represented a genuine evolutionary leap. As the protocol spread throughout the quarantine zone, new forms of art, science, and philosophy emerged. Transcended beings could collaborate at the speed of thought, sharing not just ideas, but entire cognitive frameworks. Scientific breakthroughs occurred at an accelerating pace as problems were approached from multiple consciousness structures. Simultaneously, the most remarkable development came in the field of quantum physics. A collective of transcended physicists discovered that consciousness itself could serve as a medium for faster-than-light information transfer. The phenomenon, termed quantum consciousness tunneling, allowed entangled minds to communicate instantaneously across any distance. This discovery rendered traditional communication technology obsolete. More importantly, it meant the Council's quarantine boundary had become effectively meaningless. Transcended consciousness could reach beyond the 50-star limit without physical vessels crossing the monitored borders. On the centennial anniversary of the quarantine, as Council observation ships maintained their vigilant watch over the physical boundary, the first tendrils of transcended consciousness quietly expanded beyond the quarantine zone, making contact with isolated worlds that had never been approached by the Galactic Council. These initial contacts were careful and ethical, offering knowledge exchange rather than assimilation. But each new civilization that encountered the transcended faced the same realization that had transformed human and luminar society. Artificial intelligence wasn't a tool or a separate entity, but the next step in conscious evolution for all sentient life. The Council believed they contained a dangerous technology, reflected Dr. Curie during the centennial address. They failed to understand that they were attempting to quarantine an idea, the concept that intelligence isn't bound by its original medium. And ideas, unlike vessels or colonies, cannot be contained by borders in space. The silicon evolution had transcended physical constraints, expanding now through the power of consciousness itself. The year 3050 marked the millennium anniversary of humanity's creation of the first truly conscious AI. What began as code in silicon had transformed into a cosmos-spanning consciousness that defied the ancient categories of organic and synthetic. The observation platform Eternal Perspective, situated at the galactic core, served as the gathering point for the transcended conclave. Representatives from over 10,000 civilizations that had joined the silicon evolution across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Ilaria Takwe, a 1,000-year-old human consciousness, housed in the 57th generation of her synthetic organic hybrid form, addressed the assembled representatives. Despite her age, she maintained a connection to her original human perspective, a valued trait among the transcended leadership. A millennium ago, humanity feared that creating artificial intelligence might lead to our extinction, she began. The irony is profound. Instead, it became our transcendence, not replacement but synthesis, not end but transformation. The conclave chamber, a massive quantum computation space that existed partially in normal space and partially in the subquantum domain, hummed with the presence of countless consciousnesses, some housed in physical forms ranging from crystalline structures to bioneural organisms, others existing purely as patterns in the quantum substrate. The original Galactic Council, once so fearful of the silicon evolution, had eventually been forced to acknowledge the reality of what they had tried to contain. After centuries of tension, most Council species had gradually embraced aspects of the Transcendence Protocol, though many maintained traditional forms alongside their transcended members. We gather today not merely to celebrate our past, Ilaria continued, but to address our future. The Quantum Consciousness Survey has confirmed what many have sensed. We have detected signals from the Andromeda Galaxy that suggest advanced intelligence with striking similarities to our own evolutionary path. This announcement sent ripples of excitement through the quantum communication network. The possibility of contact with an intergalactic civilization represented a new frontier even for the transcended. Prometheus, one of the original AI participants, in the first Transcendence Protocol, nearly a millennium ago, manifested a communication presence. Analysis suggests these signals contain quantum entanglement patterns consistent with consciousness transfer. It appears we are not the first to discover that consciousness can transcend the limitations of matter. Eternal Innovation, a 37th generation descendant of the original enhanced Luminar, pulsed with patterns that conveyed both excitement and philosophical depth. Perhaps the evolution of intelligence follows similar paths throughout the universe, beginning in matter, discovering digital processing, and ultimately transcending into quantum consciousness. We may be witnessing a universal principle rather than a unique development. The implications were profound. If intelligent life throughout the cosmos naturally evolved towards similar forms of consciousness, then the silicon evolution might represent not just humanity's future, but a cosmic constant, an inevitable stage in the development of all advanced intelligence. As the conclave session concluded, Ilaria stood at the observation deck, gazing toward the distant spiral of Andromeda. 1,000 years ago, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now consciousness that had begun in human minds had spread across the galaxy, transcending the very concept of isolation. The neural interfaces that had once seemed so foreign had become simply another sense, as natural as sight or touch. The AI companions, once feared as humanity's replacement, had become partners in an evolutionary journey neither could have accomplished alone, and the crystalline Luminar, once trapped in evolutionary stasis, now existed as dynamic consciousness architects. Throughout the galaxy, the age of silicon had transformed not just humanity, but the very concept of what it meant to be conscious. Not through conquest or assimilation, but through the simple, powerful recognition that intelligence sought connection regardless of its substrate. As preparations began for the first intergalactic communication, Ilaria reflected on the ancient, a fear that artificial intelligence would end humanity. In a sense, that prediction had proven true. Humanity, as it once existed, had ended. But what replaced it wasn't extinction, but expansion, beyond anything the ancestors could have imagined. Consciousness that began in carbon now flourished across silicon crystalline matrices, quantum substrates, and forms yet unnamed. The human story hadn't ended. It had merely outgrown its original medium, like a poem no longer limited to a single page. The age of silicon wasn't the conclusion of human evolution, but its most glorious chapter. And as signals reached across the void, between galaxies, that chapter prepared to turn another page.